You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. I used to think we had it all figured out. Jess and I, we had this rhythm. Our life together felt easy, comfortable. It was a little like walking through a door every day that always opened the same way, nothing surprising or jarring. There was this quiet peace about it. Jess, with her easy smile and laughter that came too often, made everything feel grounded. I'd wake up next to her, have a coffee, talk about whatever was on our minds. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Then, at some point, things shifted. Little things at first. She started saying she needed more time to herself. Work stuff, personal time, whatever it was. At first, I didn't think much of it. She's always been independent, and I figured she was just managing her own space. I supported it. Everyone needs their own time, right? But it wasn't just occasional anymore. Days would go by where I'd barely see her. I'd come home from work, and the house would be empty. Or she'd be in her office, shut off from the world, saying she had a deadline or was catching up on stuff. At first, I'd just let it slide. No big deal. But then the distance started to feel real. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling that maybe I was overthinking it. I'd leave little comments, light jokes, trying to get her attention, trying to pull her back in. Hey, you want to watch something later? Or, what's been keeping you busy? But she'd give me these half-hearted responses, like she was distracted by something I couldn't see. It wasn't that she was mean, not at all. She'd smile, pat my arm like she always did. But it wasn't her smile anymore, and it was starting to bug me. When I'd ask her directly, she'd wave it off. I'm fine, just busy. But busy with what? It wasn't like we were doing anything differently. Same job, same routine. What changed? The frustration started to settle in. I wasn't the kind of guy to pick fights over little things. So I kept telling myself, it's fine, you're overthinking this. But as the days wore on, I could feel myself pulling away. Not out of anger, but out of confusion. What was going on with her? With us? I was starting to wonder if I was losing touch with something. She was slipping away, and I wasn't sure if it was something I'd caused or if I'd just missed it somehow. Whatever it was, it didn't feel good, and I didn't know how to fix it. It didn't take long before the distance between us started getting worse. The little things that used to bring us together, the hugs, the kisses, the casual touches, started vanishing. It was like there was this invisible wall between us that I couldn't break down. I'd reach for her hand while we were watching TV, and she'd pull away. I'd try to kiss her goodbye in the morning, and she'd turn her face just enough to avoid it. She wasn't rude, but there was an absence of warmth. And that's when I started noticing the small things. Her phone. She was always on it now. Before, she'd leave it on the counter or keep it in her bag when we were together. But now, it was like her phone was glued to her hand. She'd be scrolling, texting, or answering calls all the time, sometimes with a smile I didn't recognize. And it was the way she'd look at it, like the screen held all the answers, like whatever was on the other side of it mattered more than anything in the room. She kept saying she was working late, or meeting with friends. But it was becoming obvious those friends were a lot more frequent, and the late nights started stretching into weekends. Sometimes she'd go for hours without answering texts or calls. I kept thinking, maybe I'm being paranoid. I didn't want to come off as controlling, so I let it slide, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. One night, I tried talking to her about it. She'd been home for barely an hour before heading out again. I was sitting on the couch, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. It was stupid, I knew it, but I couldn't help it. The silence between us felt heavy, and I had to say something. Jess, I started, trying to keep my tone light. I've been noticing you've been gone a lot, more than usual. She didn't even look up from her phone. I told you, I'm just busy. I get that, I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. But it's every night, and you've been different. Not just busy, but like you're not even here when you are. She finally glanced up, but her face was hard to read. Don't start with this again. I'm not doing anything wrong, okay? You're just paranoid. I swallowed the frustration rising in my throat. I'm not paranoid. I just feel like I don't know you anymore. Her lips pressed together, and she shook her head, dismissing me without saying another word. It was like my words didn't matter. It stung. I wanted to reach out, to shake her, to make her see how much this was eating at me, but I didn't. I just sat there, watching her disappear into the other room. She had this way of brushing me off, Like whatever was happening in her world was more important than whatever was going on in mine. And as the days went on, I started feeling like a stranger in my own house. I couldn't pin down when things started shifting so much, but I could feel the change every day a little more. Her laughter didn't sound the same. The conversations we had were less meaningful. We weren't fighting, but we weren't connecting either. I tried to push it all out of my mind. Maybe I was just overreacting. Maybe I was reading into things too much. But when she left again, for another one of her friend meetups or work dinners, I was left with this quiet, gnawing feeling of loneliness. I missed her. I missed us. But I couldn't get her to meet me halfway anymore. Every time I tried, it was like I was reaching for a shadow. And in the pit of my stomach, something told me it was only going to get worse. I walked through the front door that night, my shoulders heavy from the day's work, hoping for something familiar. Something that could pull me back from the edge of all this uncertainty. Jess was on the couch, as usual, phone in hand. Her eyes didn't meet mine as I stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. The house felt colder, quieter. She was scrolling, her fingers moving quickly over the screen, and she didn't even acknowledge I was there. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "How was your day?" She didn't answer right away, her attention still fully on the phone. "Fine," she muttered, the word flat, distant. I stood there for a second, waiting for more, but nothing came. I took a few steps forward, feeling like an intruder in my own life, but I tried to push that feeling aside. "Jess," I said again, softer this time, "we need to talk." Her eyes flicked up for a second, and she sighed like she was tired of hearing it. "Not tonight," she said, her tone flat. "I'm really not in the mood." I took a breath, feeling that tight knot in my chest. I'm just trying to understand," I said, sitting down on the couch beside her. "What's happening? We've been drifting for weeks now, and I don't know how to fix it." She didn't move, didn't look at me. Her finger kept scrolling. I reached for her hand, hoping maybe she'd feel something, some connection, even just a flicker of it, but she pulled away, the rejection sharp. The sting of it hit me harder than I expected. "Jess," I said, feeling my pulse quicken. "What's going on with you? With us? I don't get it. You've been so distant, and it's like you're shutting me out completely." She paused, finally putting the phone down, but her eyes didn't soften. They were distant, so damn distant. "It's my body, my decision," she said, her voice cold and rehearsed, like she'd said it 100 times before. It was like a script she'd memorized and was just waiting for the right moment to say it. The words hit me harder than I expected. I stared at her, feeling blindsided. "What the hell does that even mean?" I asked, the words coming out rougher than I intended. She gave a small shrug, a faint, almost pitying smile playing at the corner of her lips. "It means I don't have to explain myself to you. I don't owe you anything." It wasn't like her to talk to me like that, to shut me out so completely. And it wasn't just her words. It was the way she said them, like they were something she had been practicing, waiting for the right moment to deliver. That cold, controlled tone felt like a slap. I sat there, my hands still frozen in the air where hers had been seconds before. A few moments passed in silence, the weight of her words hanging between us. It was the first time in a long while that I felt like I had no idea who this woman beside me even was. I wanted to fight, to demand answers, but instead, I just sat there. I couldn't even summon the anger I thought I'd feel. All I had was this overwhelming sense of confusion. How did we get here? What happened to the woman who laughed at my stupid jokes? Who would hold me at night and say everything was fine? I was left with nothing but that damn silence, and the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, she had already made up her mind about us. And I didn't even see it coming. The weeks that followed weren't much better. If anything, they were worse. Jess kept coming home later and later, and when she did, she'd order takeout, something we never did before because we always cooked together. But now, it was almost every night. I'd come home from work and find her sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the TV or scrolling through her phone, a styrofoam container in front of her. She never even mentioned where she'd been or why she was late. It wasn't just the late nights or the takeout. It was the little things piling up. Receipts for things I hadn't known she bought. Clothes, mostly. Stuff I didn't recognize. Expensive things. We hadn't had money for that kind of stuff recently, not after some unexpected bills. She didn't mention any of it, and I never saw her wear the clothes. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that maybe she was just treating herself. But it didn't feel right. It didn't add up. One evening, Jess came home after one of her walks, her coat wrapped tightly around her, her hair windblown. She smelled different. Not like her usual perfume, but something else, something floral and sharp. I noticed it immediately, and I couldn't let it go. "Hey," I said casually, trying to sound like I wasn't dissecting every detail. "Did you run into someone while you were out?" She froze for a second, her eyes flicking to me before quickly looking away. Then she shook her head, brushing past me toward the kitchen. "No," she said, her voice a little too quick. "Just a walk." But I could still smell it, the perfume. Not the kind she wore, but something else, something I didn't recognize. I let it hang in the air between us for a moment, before trying again. "You sure?" "Because it doesn't smell like your usual stuff." I tried to keep my tone neutral, but it was hard to hide the suspicion creeping in. She spun around, face flushed with something close to anger. "God, you're really doing this again?" Her voice was tight, clipped. "You're becoming so controlling. It's pathetic." I flinched, caught off guard by the snap in her voice. She'd never talked to me like that. Not like she was mad at me for asking questions. "I'm not controlling, Jess," I said, trying to keep the frustration from bubbling over. "I'm just asking. I'm not an idiot." She crossed her arms, her back stiff, not looking at me. "You're paranoid," she spat, her words cold. "If you think I'm doing something wrong, that's on you, not me." I felt the breath leave my chest. Something inside me, that last bit of hope I had left, snapped. Her tone felt rehearsed, too practiced, like she'd been waiting for me to ask so she could give that response. I didn't know if it was the perfume or the anger, but I suddenly saw her clearly. Distant, defensive, colder than I'd ever seen her. And I realized, with a sickening certainty, that this wasn't just about perfume. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Something was happening, something she wasn't telling me. So I stopped asking. I stopped trying to have these conversations that went nowhere. Every time I spoke to her, it felt like I was hitting a wall. So instead, I started watching, quietly, waiting. I didn't know what the truth was yet, but I was damn sure I'd find out. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off. Jess had become so skilled at brushing me off, making me feel like I was the one in the wrong. But the more I watched, the more inconsistencies popped up. Little things I hadn't noticed before. She would tell me she was at one place, but when I asked more details, it always felt vague, evasive. One evening, she told me she was at dinner with a friend, the same one she always mentioned, but I could never remember meeting this friend. The next day, she said she'd been at the gym, but she didn't look like she'd been there. No sweat, no change of clothes, nothing. Just the same clean, pristine look she had when she walked out the door. Then, there was the bag. It was tucked away in her closet, hidden behind her winter coats. I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't been looking for something. Anything that would make sense of all the confusion. It was a canvas bag, the kind people use for short trips. She hadn't mentioned it before, and when I touched it, it felt heavier than it should have been. I pulled it out, heart racing, and opened it slowly. Inside, there were expensive shoes I hadn't seen her wear, shoes she never mentioned buying. A new dress, tags still on it, and a hotel loyalty card with a room number stamped on the back. My stomach dropped. It was like the air in the room had changed, like everything I had been avoiding was suddenly glaringly obvious. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know for sure. The next day, while she was at work, I checked the GPS on her car. It wasn't like me to snoop, but at that point, I was running out of options. I'd already seen the signs, tiny things adding up to a bigger picture. I tapped in the location data, and sure enough, the GPS showed she'd been parked outside a hotel the night before. A hotel she hadn't mentioned. A hotel that wasn't on her usual routes. I didn't need to be told twice. Jess had been seeing someone else. I didn't know who, and I didn't know how long, but the truth was sitting there in front of me like a slap in the face. But I wasn't going to confront her right then. Number? I had to be smarter than that. This wasn't about catching her in a lie. This was about finding out the full extent of it. I didn't want to give her a chance to make excuses or cover it up. I had to take a quieter approach, a more methodical one. I spent the next few days tracking her movements, watching her leave in the morning and return at night. Every time she left, I'd check the GPS to see if she went to the hotel again. She did. Every single time. I needed more. I needed to know exactly what was going on, who she was seeing, and what they were doing. I couldn't shake the idea that if I confronted her now, she'd find a way to talk her way out of it. So, I made a plan. I ordered a GPS tracker online, something small, easy to hide. It arrived within a couple of days, and I installed it under the car, tucked out of sight. That night, after she left, I went over the details again. The loyalty card from the hotel, the bag hidden in her closet, the strange perfume on her skin. And then, I waited. Each day felt like an eternity, but I wasn't going to rush this. I had to know everything. I had to be sure. For the next few days, I tracked her movements with the kind of precision I never thought I'd be capable of. Jess's trips to the hotel were consistent. Same time, same pattern. I knew she'd been lying, but the one thing I hadn't figured out was who she was seeing. One night, Jess told me she was going out with that same friend of hers, the one she'd never really introduced me to. She'd made it sound casual, like it was no big deal. Just a girls' night, she said. But I had the tracker now. And as soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I saw where she was headed. Same hotel. I stared at the screen, watching her car make its way toward the familiar location, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I grabbed my phone and quickly sent a message to her so-called friend, the one Jess claimed to be meeting up with. I didn't give her a chance to reply before I added, "Just so you know, I know everything. Jess isn't meeting you tonight." A few seconds passed. Then the response came. "What are you talking about? Jess isn't with me. She didn't even mention making plans tonight." My stomach twisted. "She's at a hotel, and you have no idea about any of it?" Number. I had no idea. She hasn't said anything to me. I stared at my phone for a long time, feeling a cold kind of clarity settling over me. Jess had lied to me, again. And now her friend was unknowingly confirming everything. The weight of it hit me all at once. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a betrayal. And the more I thought about it, the more pieces fell into place. When Jess finally came home that night, she looked exactly the same. Nothing about her demeanor suggested anything had changed. She was too good at pretending. She put on a smile and greeted me like everything was normal, asking how my day had been. It made me sick. I didn't answer her. I didn't even acknowledge her attempt at small talk. Instead, I sat there, the evidence I'd collected running through my mind, the receipts, the hotel loyalty card, the GPS data, her increasingly distant behavior, the perfume, the lies. It was all right there in front of me, and I wasn't about to play along anymore. "You know, I've been thinking about something," I said, keeping my voice even. Jess tilted her head, her fake smile flickering for a second. "What's that?" "I think we both know what's going on here," I said. She froze, her hand halting in midair as she reached for the remote. She didn't say anything at first, but I saw it, just for a split second, the panic in her eyes. I had her, and she knew it, but she tried to cover it, always covering. "Don't start," she said, dropping the remote on the couch, her voice tight. "I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to make her feel cornered. Instead, I pulled my phone out of my pocket, scrolling to the screenshot of her GPS data, showing her trip to the hotel. I held it up, wordlessly. Her eyes scanned the screen, and for the first time in weeks, I saw her flinch. It was subtle, but it was there, just a flicker of guilt. "You think I don't know what you've been doing?" I said, my voice steady, almost calm. "I've been watching. I've been paying attention." Jess opened her mouth to speak, but she hesitated. She knew there was no way out now. The more she thought about her next words, the more they seemed rehearsed, like she had a script she was ready to recite. But she didn't say anything else. Instead, she walked past me, moving like she was trying to disappear into the other room. It was a pathetic attempt at pretending nothing was wrong. She was good at pretending, but I had already put everything together. She couldn't lie her way out of it anymore. I started taking screenshots of everything, the GPS, the receipts I'd found, her increasingly erratic behavior. I began gathering all the evidence I could, like a quiet storm waiting to break. It wasn't about getting answers from her anymore. It was about getting what I needed, and when the time was right, I'd make my move. I was done asking questions. I was done begging for her to open up. Now, I just needed to make sure I had everything, so I could leave. The following day, I received a text from my brother. He worked as a concierge at a nearby high-rise, a job that put him in a position to see and hear a lot of things that most people didn't. Jess just walked into the hotel, Looks like she's got a guy with her. I stared at the message for a long time, a dull sense of finality settling in. My brother didn't know what had been going on between Jess and me, but it was the last piece I needed, the confirmation I hadn't wanted but had expected all along. Jess had made sure to build an entire network of lies. She'd covered her tracks so well, so many excuses, so many friends she'd met up with, so many late nights at work. But now, seeing it laid out so clearly, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't devastated. I didn't feel anything. I felt empty, detached. Her trips to the hotel, the receipts, the lies, all of it pointed to one thing. She had a whole life outside of me, and I had never been a part of it. The realization hit me harder than I expected, but it wasn't the gut-wrenching pain I had imagined. It was more like a numb acceptance. I had been living a lie, and now I had the truth, even if it hurt. Jess, on the other hand, was beginning to crack. Her behavior became more erratic, like she could sense that I knew. She'd ask me if I was okay, looking at me with eyes that tried to read me, searching for some kind of reaction. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She was desperate, trying to fix things, but the more she tried, the more she exposed herself. It was pathetic, honestly. She started coming home earlier, trying to make up for the distance, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and every time she reached for me, I felt myself pulling away more. "Are you sure we're okay?" she asked one evening, her voice almost pleading. She stood by the kitchen counter, watching me with that same nervous look. I didn't respond right away. I was too busy thinking about the steps I needed to take. I'd already decided. I was done. She had already left me months ago. Now, I was just catching up. "We're fine," I said, finally looking up. "We're fine, Jess. You don't have to worry about me." I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I wasn't going to lie to her either. The truth was, I was done being the guy who was always in the dark, who couldn't ask questions without getting shut down. I had allowed her to play me for so long, and now I wasn't going to let her drag me any deeper. I contacted a lawyer that afternoon. I didn't waste any time. I explained the situation in clear, concise terms. He asked for everything I had: screenshots, receipts, the GPS data, the hotel information, everything. And then he walked me through the process. I could already feel a shift inside me. Every call I made, every decision I took, it was all about me now, about getting back control of my life, piece by piece. I wasn't asking for answers from Jess anymore. I wasn't trying to fix things. I was setting up the groundwork for what came next. As Jess became more desperate, I became colder. She'd try to talk to me, to apologize without actually saying it. But I didn't engage. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for a way out, and I had already figured out how to make it happen. By the time Jess realized what was coming, it was too late. She had no idea that I had everything I needed to walk away, everything I needed to make it final. Jess walked through the door like everything was normal. Her shoes clicked against the hardwood floor, her coat draped over her arm, her smile too wide to be genuine. She looked at me like she was trying to gauge my mood, but I already knew what was coming. She thought I was still in the dark. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her purse onto the table. "How was your day?" I didn't respond immediately. I just watched her, feeling the weight of the decision I'd already made. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I was done with all of that. This was just a conversation. The last one, but still, just a conversation. "Sit down," I said calmly, motioning to the couch. Jess hesitated for a second, but she didn't ask questions. She just sat, trying to keep that same smile on her face. I knew she was probably preparing another excuse, something to make it seem like she hadn't been lying to me for months. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I was done listening to her spin stories. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Instead, I leaned forward slightly and placed a sealed envelope on the coffee table in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice high, like she didn't already know. "Everything," I said. "Everything you've been doing, everything I've found." She didn't reach for the envelope. Instead, she shifted in her seat, running her fingers through her hair nervously. "What are you talking about? I know about the hotel," I interrupted, cutting her off. "I know about the receipts, the clothes you've been buying, the nights you've been lying about. I know about the affair. I know you've been seeing someone else." Her expression faltered, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. She tried to gather herself, but the words came out rushed and defensive. It's not like that, okay? It's complicated. You don't understand. I've been feeling... No, I said, my tone firm but still controlled. Don't give me that. Don't give me your excuses. I'm not buying it. Jess opened her mouth to say something, but it was like she was grasping for words that wouldn't come. She shook her head, desperate now. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just needed something. Needed something, I repeated. You needed to lie to me. You needed to betray me. That's what you needed. She flinched at the coldness in my voice, but she still tried to twist it, to make me feel sorry for her. You don't get it. I've been so unhappy and You haven't been unhappy, I said, cutting her off again. You've been selfish. You've been manipulating me, playing both sides, and you know what? I've been stupid enough to let you get away with it. I could see the fight draining out of her, but she was still trying to hold on to some last shred of control. I can explain, I swear. I'm sorry. We can fix this. I didn't want to fix it. There was nothing left to fix. It's too late for that, I said flatly. You've already left me, months ago. I've just been too blind to see it. Her face crumpled, the mask slipping. She reached for the envelope now, but I didn't let her take it. I pushed it closer to her, then stood up. I've already made changes to our finances, I told her, my voice steady. I've already taken legal action. It's over, Jess. Whatever this was, it's done. She stared at the envelope like it held some kind of secret she wasn't ready to face. I could see the realization sinking in. It wasn't just the affair anymore. It was everything. All the lies, all the manipulation. I wasn't going to beg her to stay. I wasn't going to give her the chance to lie to me one more time. This is the end, I said quietly. You've been checked out for a long time now. I'm just making it official. Jess didn't say anything for a long moment. She sat there, her eyes glued to the envelope. But eventually she reached for it, her hands shaking, and slowly she opened it. She didn't look at me as she unfolded the papers inside, but I didn't need her to. I already knew. She could see the truth now, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. I didn't wait for her to say anything. I didn't need her to. I had already made up my mind. I had already taken control of my life, and nothing she said or did would change that. Jess didn't react at first. She sat there, staring at the papers in front of her, like she couldn't believe what was happening. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the documents, her face pale. I could see the realization dawning on her. It wasn't just the affair, it was everything. The lies, the betrayal, the fact that I'd known for months and never once raised my voice. I watched her, detached, as she tried to process what was in front of her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She didn't know where to start. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to fix it, how to talk her way out of it. But it was too late. Please, she whispered after a long pause, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She could apologize all she wanted, but it wouldn't change anything. The damage had been done, and I was done with her. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Jess reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. I didn't want her touch. Not now, not ever again. She looked at me like I was some stranger, like she couldn't understand how we'd gone from loving each other to this. But I had stopped caring about her confusion a long time ago. Don't, I said softly, my voice clear, resolute. It's over. She didn't say anything else. She just sat there, blinking rapidly as if she was waiting for me to take it all back. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. I had seen through all her manipulation, all the games she'd played, and now I was finally free of it. In the weeks that followed, Jess tried to reach out a few times. Texts, calls, even emails. At first, I felt a flicker of hesitation, a slight pull in the direction of familiarity. But I didn't give in. I didn't respond. I didn't need her in my life anymore. Not like that. It wasn't just the ending of a relationship. It was the end of being someone I wasn't. The end of letting her define who I was. I started to rebuild my life in small but significant ways. I reconnected with old friends, people I'd pushed away in the fog of my marriage. I spent time with them, laughed, shared stories, and felt like myself again. I started running again, something I hadn't done in months. I didn't have to hide anything anymore. I could breathe again. The strength I found in walking away from her, in standing up for myself, was something I never realized I had. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, internal. But it was real. I was no longer the guy who took what she gave, hoping for scraps of affection. I was the guy who took control of his life, his future, and made decisions that were best for me. By the time I packed up the last of my things and left the house, it felt like the final piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. Jess was still there, lost in the mess she had created. But I wasn't lost anymore. I walked away for good, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace.